I thank the gentleman, and I'll submit my full opening statement for the record. I know we have votes on the floor that we need to get to. I just want to point out that much of what we're talking about today does not even involve federal issues, because building codes, for the most part, are local governments. There's no national or federal building code because under the U.S. Constitution, the regulation of construction is a state right, with some localities going even further. But however, DOE and other agencies, they don't mandate building codes, but they have developed voluntary building codes which can address many of our important concerns, including public health, safety, and environmental protection. They're developed by a democratic and deliberative process, and so they also address cost efficiency and investment value. But again, the people who are developing and promulgating these codes are state and local governments, not the federal government. Why have building codes? Well, because they affect us every day. Some building codes, like fire safety codes and structural and seismic standards, affect us in obvious ways. Others, like lighting, quality, acoustics, and the air we breathe, are less noticeable, but they still have major impacts on our health and productivities. We spend about 90% of our lives in buildings, including to the EPA, which is why we're concerned about the impact of building codes on public health. And so these model codes can really help us build it right at the beginning, but frankly, they only work if they're used and enforced by state and local governments. So that's what's happening here. Now, many buildings that have been built previously, they waste a lot of energy because one of the concerns in building buildings was not energy efficiency as a priority. We don't have to have that as a case now, as we're understanding how important energy efficiency is. Buildings in the United States account for about 70% of electricity use, about 40% of the total U.S. primary energy consumption, and about 30% of operational GHG emissions. All of that consumption and waste, they unnecessarily cost homeowners and building owners billions of dollars a year, which is kind of ironic and inexcusable in times of budgetary and economic stress. Buildings that are constructed to the new codes will close a significant portion of the gap between how energy efficient the average building is. So it's sort of a win-win because you get more efficiency, that causes lower energy costs, it means fewer emissions, better to help us get to our climate goals, and it's cheaper for the building owners and the homeowners. What's not to like about that? But apparently, my friends on the other side of the aisle don't like it because they don't want to have any regulations. My consumers, the people who live in the 1st Congressional District of Colorado, they would like to pay as little money as they can for energy every month. And that's why having good and equitable building codes will really help. With that, as I said, I'll put my full statement in the record and I yield back. Okay, well, following up on what the chairman said, the houses that you build, Mr. Howard, you said that you're building those houses for a variety of people because they're affordable. Is that right?
That is correct.
You're not just building them for college students, you're building them for retired people and for young professionals and others.
Certainly, yeah. Our target market is really both ends of the spectrum, first-time home buyers that are typically in their 20s and 30s, as well as retirees who want to downsize into single-level living.
And are those and also you?
That's right. I'm not quite ready to retire yet.
Okay, no, yeah. But I mean, were the homes that the chairman was showing you, were those your homes?
Actually, the two-story is mine, yes.
Okay, so we had heard claims that the codes that the administration is pursuing would add $22,000 to $31,000 to the price of a new house. That's several times more than HUD found, or the Energy Department, or the most recent study conducted by Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. Is that true from your experience?
Not in my experience, no. As I mentioned in my testimony, I'm seeing cost increases somewhere in the neighborhood of $6,000 to $7,000, which aligns with the numbers that we're seeing from the national labs.
And that's a cost for the home that is built, is it to these new codes, or is it higher than these new codes, as you testified?
So again, I'm building to the DOE Zero Energy Ready Home Standard, which
Okay.
is based on the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code.
Okay, and so what, and then you were saying, though, that that cost can be offset. Is that right?
Certainly. So the 45L tax credit can directly offset some of that cost, but you're also seeing significant cost savings over the lifetime that you live in that home.
Well, that's correct. Let's say you have a 30-year mortgage. Let's say it's $6,000 to $7,000 over 30 years. But then are you accounting for the reduced energy bills?
Yeah, certainly. I think just based on a simple payback calculation, you're probably talking about a 6 to 7 year payback that we're seeing. And, again, this is just my experience in a small town in western North Carolina.
Well, your experience is what counts. Now, are your homes popular?
I like to think so.
I mean, do you have trouble selling your homes?
No, we've not. So we typically have these homes sold before they're complete.
And what do the people tell you about why they want to purchase the homes?
I think most of my buyers are interested because of the price point. And of course, location is always a factor in a real estate transaction. But yeah, ultimately, I think they probably aren't able to appreciate the other benefits until they've actually lived in the home for some time. So we have a property owners association and we have monthly meetings. So I certainly have plenty of opportunity to hear direct feedback from my buyers. And I think the things that surprise them the most, or they're pleasantly surprised by how easy it is to heat and cool these homes, how comfortable they are. They've also commented on how quiet the homes are. So a home that is better insulated and better air sealed also ends up being just a quieter place to live.
Okay, thank you. Now, I just want to set the record straight with something. Some of my colleagues have been talking about federal buildings and and the quote green projects. I just want to point out that under the 2007 Energy Independence and Security Act, which was signed into law by President George W. Bush, that requires the DOE to develop and finalize a regulation that phases out fossil fuel consumption in federal buildings. The recently finalized Clean Energy for New Federal Buildings and Major Renovations of Federal Buildings rule completes the statutory requirement that was placed on the DOE under the George W. Bush administration. The total net benefit to the public, according to DOE's estimates, will reach up to $134 million, and it's expected to reduce carbon emissions by 2 million metric tons and methane emissions by 16,000 tons, which is equivalent to cutting pollution from 310,000 homes in 1 year. So I guess my point of saying this is I really feel like Congress and local and state governments and home builders and others could work together to try to find affordable, energy-efficient buildings that could actually be economically viable and positive. And that's what I think we should be talking about. I yield back.